are here with Ian Smith Fitness. Welcome back to the All American Savage Show podcast. I've got a very controversial figure, and I fucking love that. I love having just people that piss other people off. I love having that on the show. So I got to make sure my audio is correct because we did the show earlier today, and I was just all jacked up. So I think we're good to go. Ian, thank you for coming on the show, man. I appreciate you taking time off your busy schedule. I know you're running a gym. I know as a business owner, it takes a lot out of you. And then you're doing a lot of traveling. You're doing a lot of guest appearances, a lot of speaking engagements. So how are you doing? Mm-hmm.
Endeavor here at Attila's Gym, and it's warped into something that I don't think anybody really thought it was going to. But you know, we enjoy it as hard as it is to do the things that we've done and continue to do. So.
Mm-hmm. So for those that don't know, you took a stand and you're in New Jersey. For some reason, I thought New York. I don't know why, but you're in New Jersey. When the shutdowns happened, you refused. You said, we're not doing this. We're not going to comply. What has happened as a result of that? For the audience that doesn't know, just for whatever reason they don't, what's going on right now with that?
So we did shut down, and we reopened 2 months after the shutdown because there was no plan to reopen all of these businesses that were just shuttered, and we did so very publicly because we knew it was going to turn into some sort of just head-to-head match with government. And we just wanted to make sure that people were aware of that and people could see that because it's a public issue.
Right.
So it turned into something much bigger as a result of that. And, we're still 18 months into it.
Your stand, the stand that you took, it really blew up. You garnished a lot of attention. You attracted a lot of business because people saw a patriot actually saying, we're not going to adhere to this. You're killing us. You're not going to survive this. So if we don't reopen, we're out of a job. And this whole thing that you've worked your ass off is gone tits up and it's over.
Yeah. And, I think we had a message that was that a lot of people were feeling kind of right at the right time. They asked for 2 weeks. And all of a sudden we were coming up on 2 months and people were starting to lose everything they worked for, especially a lot of small businesses, but even just a lot of middle-class Americans who were being laid off as a result of these business closures or whatever it is, or people who just wanted the right to work and not be shuttered in their homes. And I think our choice to reopen at 2 months was just a combination of right message, right time. And it just really took off. It resonated with a lot of people. And as the fight escalated, we didn't, like I said, we never imagined it would go this far. We thought at some point government would want to work with the public, and that's why funny mistake.
A mistake you'll never make again. I tell people religiously, don't trust the government, whether it's state or federal. Never trust the government.
I've always had a healthy skepticism for government, and as much as I knew that they weren't going with us, in order to do the right thing, we had to at least extend that offer. And we weren't very surprised when all they've tried to do is work against us. We're still very deep in legal proceedings, but it's a consequence of the stance we took. And when we started this, we Frank and I looked at each other and we said, we're going to see this all the way through. If we're going to open, we're going to take our stand, and it's not going to be, something bad happens or some punishment happens. We knew what we were up against. So we were prepared to take it to the extent that we have, where we just don't quit.
And you've taken a lot of financial beatings. They're coming after you left and right, trying to. Well, give me some of the things that they're doing to you right now financially, because I've been following the story and watching a lot of your posts of what you've been saying as far as I'll let you explain it better than I can.
Well, so when we originally reopened 2 months after the original lockdowns, we didn't charge our members because it really wasn't about making money at the time. It was about the fact that, hey, you shouldn't be able to tell us that we can't close. Not to mention the fact that we didn't know who was going to want to come and who wasn't, so we weren't just going to turn on our billing. So it was, hey, we're open, we're going to operate until we're allowed to. And then once we were able to operate, under the executive orders, they had taken our business license. So we've sustained almost 18 months now of operations with just donations and just through T-shirt sales. because we can't offer gym memberships. And in the midst of that, in ongoing litigation, the judge on the case, guy's name's Robert Lugie, decided that because we were in contempt of a court order, he was going to fine us $15,497.76 per day for every day that we were for every day that we were in operation. So that wound up accumulating to, I don't know, probably about 4 or 5 months of operations.
Now, is that still going on?
Yeah. So what the state has to do is every day that they want to fine us for, all they have to do is go onto our social media, and find a post from somebody somewhere that shows we were open, which, we don't hide it. So you could do it for every day if you wanted to. And then they go to the judge and say, hey, here's the evidence. Here's the days, fine them accordingly. So they come through in like blocks. We've been fined, like 140,000. We had 170,000 taken from our bank account. Just sort of like plucked right out in the middle of the night. It was there one night, and the next morning when Frank does the books and stuff, and he checked, he goes, well, they took our money. And it was just.
So do you know who exactly took it? Was it?
It was the state of New Jersey. That's what it says it right on the bank receipt. It's a state execution.
So they coordinated with your bank. They coordinated with your bank without even telling you, and they just took it.
And then what they say, because I went on Tucker Carlson after that, and their comment to Tucker Carlson was that the money hadn't been seized. It was just taken, and the bank is essentially holding it in an escrow account.
That's kind of like being seized.
Yeah, and it's like, so they were like, well, we don't have it, but the bank just has it, and he could possibly get it, or they could possibly get it at a later time. But so they like to dance around and play these games. And then they recently took another 40,000.
Jesus Christ. So let me ask you a question, like a basic, and then maybe because I don't understand, why not transfer the money like to an offshore account? I don't know, something to where it basically gets out of the reach of the local government.
I guess Frank and I are just very apprehensive to give them any other reason to give us any trouble. Like, God forbid we didn't do it perfectly right. Next thing you know, they're coming after us for financial, like we're trying to, hide money or something like that. And it's just a really fine line. We chose a battle with the government, and our battle is about limiting executive powers, because that was the problem the whole time, is all these governors came in and said, well, basically ruled by decree. And we had an issue with that, because that's not the way that power was intended to be used. It was intended to be used in true emergencies where, it's only supposed to last or 30 days or whatever it is. And then it's supposed to be if it needs to be extended, it needs to go through a legislative process. There's a method that this is supposed to go through, and there's a specific way to use it. And it's being abused. These governors are just running these orders back to back. And now you see them, everything they do is just by executive order. Like, they don't even bother passing laws anymore. They just,
it's gotten out
so
of
that's
hand,
that. And that was our fight. So we're not trying to pick fights with governments, with the government everywhere. Our strategy financially has been, any dollar that we make, we spend. We just pay our bills as far ahead as possible. So,
smart.
What are you going to take from us? So we still sell the T-shirts, and we still, we do fundraising, and people donate, but we just spend our money as soon as we can, so that they can't turn the lights off, they can't shut the gym down, they can't turn the electric off, and the lawyers are paid. And then it's just keep going, because it's one of those 12-round fights where you're fighting. Either it can be a big corporation, it can be big government. They have unlimited money, they have unlimited legal resources, and they know if you get to round 12, you have a high probability of winning. But if they can beat you somewhere between 1 and 11, they will. So they'll try everything. At one point, the state of New Jersey had 9 of the 12 attorney generals in the state on our case. So, I mean, they were using 75% of the state's legal power.
You would think there's more important things to deal with, like, I don't know, rape, sex trafficking, murder, all these things. But no, we're gonna allocate 75% of state legal resources to go. Man, you really pissed him off. Like I'm so fucking proud. I'm so goddamn proud. That's amazing, man.
It's laughable. It really is.
It is, yeah.
But anyway, you learn a lot through these things, and it's just kind of funny because you see the way that the government just doesn't work.
Yeah,
there's
they
a lot
abuse
of
their
there's a
power.
lot of
They
change that
literally
needs to happen.
disregard the law. They disregard the law and they just do whatever the fuck they want. They just do whatever they want. They walk all over who they want. Like it's literally like, hey, there's a system set. There's a system set in place that you're supposed to adhere to, and then the government's like, fuck it, we'll do something else. And it's just like, I mean, if this was back in the day, it would be war. It's like motherfuckers are going to war over this. So
now they just say it's an emergency.
Yeah, exactly.
That's all they say. It's an
I
emergency.
mean, Bush did it
Everything's
through
an emergency.
Bush did it when he basically circumvented Congress to push for the invasion of Afghanistan and Iraq. So it's now people are starting to wake up and understand, like, look, because I was 17 when that kicked off, and I didn't really understand what was happening. I was like, fuck it, let's go to war. It's like, no, probably not the best way of doing it. It wasn't like legal the way, but so
they've normalized that too.
Yes,
they've totally normalized it where they all use it, and you even see. In cases where you might even agree with what they're doing. So a lot of people are, they like Ron DeSantis, but he's down there using executive orders, just kind of in favor of what a lot of people want. But now it's just become normal.
But when that sword swings the other way, yeah.
Yeah,
people don't want to hear that. There's a lot of bias in politics, and because Trump was doing the same thing with the executive orders to secure border wall funding, Republicans were all for it because Congress is essentially saying we're not doing this. Trump's like, no, we're gonna do it. I'm getting the funds anyway, and he did it. And I'm just kind of like, no, that's probably not the right way to do that. But Republicans were cheering him on, and DeSantis, same thing. Greg Abbott, same thing. It's the executive order. It circumvents Congress. So like, what need have we of a Congress? It's almost morphed into this weird form of dictatorship.
It is, and especially, it's all of those things that they're doing. A lot of people like, and then you have on the other side, and but what the people aren't realizing is that we're allowing this behavior where they can just say stuff and it happens. And there's no process. And what happens in that is we all lose our voice. We just become, voters that they need every couple of years to just, push through whoever, whichever one's going to swing the pendulum the other way. Meanwhile, we've lost the process of democracy, of true democracy, because now it's just this oligarchy of powerful people who stay in power and they kind of just rotate the ball around.
Now, you also lost your main Instagram account there for a little while, didn't you? What happened with that?
I got one of those shadow bans, and I don't know how it happens. I'm sure it has to do with like reporting and flagging for false information. And it's crazy because they can just kind of like turn you off. Yeah. My Instagram had grown very organically because of just everything that had happened, and there was super high engagement, and that was the way I kind of connected with people and kept people updated on what was happening at Attilas. And then they just basically, it's like turning off the light switch. It's kind of crazy, especially when you've put a lot of time and energy into a certain tool, and it's a way to connect with people. And in a lot of ways, people throughout this process had been our lifeline. There's no way that we could have done what we've done and gotten as far as we can if it wasn't for not only the support of our members in the community, but the people around the country. I mean, it's incredible how much support we get, and they were able to just kind of turn that off for a little while, where there's not much you can do. So you have to learn to walk a really fine line with these people.
And you got it back though, thankfully.
Yeah, I just kind of stayed away from it. I tried everything. I was up late at night Googling how to, how to get on shadow banned, watching like YouTube videos. I'm like, all right, you know what? I'm just gonna focus my attention somewhere else for a little while, and it came back on when I left it alone.
They got me. I had my account up to almost like 250,000, and they just pulled the plug on me out of nowhere. Done. Like just fucking banned. I opened up my Instagram. It had started flickering a few times, and then it just boom, page has been deleted. I'm like, what the fuck? And I had a backup page, thankfully. So the crazy thing is, like, I applied to get my main page verified, and they never got back to me. So for shits and giggles, it's like, you know what? I'm just going to see if my backup page, if they'll verify that. So I submitted for verification, and within like 30 minutes, boom, verified. I'm like, what the fuck? And apparently, if you have strikes against your account, they're not going to verify you. I had over like 40 strikes on my main account, but my backup one they verified. Is like, this makes no fucking sense, but whatever. But I had a contact, and basically he informed me, he's like, your main account was being reported 100 times an hour. It's like, people were coming after you, and so Instagram pulled it. I'm like, those motherfuckers. I was like, what the fuck?
It's crazy what they can do. You know, I've experienced that. The outrage mafia, you know.
Well, that was my next question. Like, what kind of hate have you gotten for you taking your stand? Because I see you post. You're like me. You call out the fucking haters, and I love that. Like, I can't help. I want to evolve emotionally, or like have enough emotional intelligence. But like, you know what? Let the haters. But after, I love fucking firing back at those cocksuckers. It gets my dick hard when I do that.
I usually try to find like one good one a day. You know what I mean? Like you don't want to like take too much time because a lot of it's like really redundant. Just like you know, it's not even worth like opening it. But sometimes it's fun to kind of just mess with somebody.
I saw the one you posted today about the woman praying for you and then saying, "I hope you fucking die." It's like what Bible did you get that out from? That's interesting.
That actually got taken down for bullying because I put up her. It's just funny the way these social media networks work. But as far as the hatred, we always got an overwhelming amount of support. It's always been like 9-1. And the support has been constant. That's the difference between the two things. And when the hatred would come, it would be usually linked to something happening in the media. Like every time we would do a major, you know, something would happen in the case, or we kicked the doors in, or we got arrested, there would be this huge wave, like anywhere from like a 24 to a 36 hour wave of just like hate phone calls and emails and messages and 1-star reviews and all this stuff. But the people who do that and behave like that are so emotional that they're on to the next thing really quick. Yeah. You know, it's very superficial. There's not a whole lot to it. You know, we've gotten some hate where it's well thought out, and we've had, you know, Frank especially has chatted with people on the phone for a long time and actually had like just legitimate discussions with people, like, you know, gotten them to sort of just talk. And sometimes they still don't agree, but, you know, they might understand where we come from. But yeah, the hatred's always kind of funny because it's just, people just want something to be upset about, you know? And you see it because like people would call in and they wouldn't even have like the details right. You know, they would just be like that. They would get half of the story, or it would just be like so far off. You're like, where did you read this at? You know what I mean? And it's like, so you just got to laugh about it, because if you pay too much attention to it, it's definitely something that can kind of, because people can be nasty.
Oh yeah.
People can be real nasty. And, you know, especially, you know, I'm far from a perfect person. I'm about the furthest thing from it.
People kept. I taught. You know, I'm clear with people. I don't pull punches and I don't hold back. Instantly, people, when I announced you were coming on the show, people wanted to bring up the incident where, you know, I'm talking about, and I was like, I've seen him address it. I'm not bringing this shit up. It's fucking, all people try and do is character assassinate, and it's one of those things of like, what good does this serve? I was like, it's character assassination. It's like, I want to focus on this issue. So, you know, and that's just how social media is, and it's morphed into this thing to where like the internet has now become the morality police. Like, if you're not living your life according to how the internet thinks that you should, they're gonna come after you. Like, and that's what scares. I shouldn't say scares me, because for me, it's just like, cancel this dick, dude. I'm not afraid of you cocksuckers. Like, if you want to come to my house, you want to come to my business, I'm armed. Good luck. But these people, they come out there with this, and like you said, they are so angry. But instantly, the next thing that pops off, they're gone. They're fucking gone.
They're right on to the next thing. So, and it's always, you know, even with my stuff, you know, I was always very open about what had happened. In fact, you know, I spoke at I think it was over 16, 17 high schools about it. You know, I've done public speaking before. I used to go and speak specifically to high schools about some of the dangers that you don't consider when you're a 19, 20-year-old kid. You know, with the way my motor vehicle accident worked, you know, I wasn't drinking and driving. I was, you know, at college, and I got my car the next morning. You know, and at that age, you don't consider those type of things, or at least I didn't. You know, I was foolish enough not to. So people will come at you, and then, you know, they'll be like, well, why don't you spend your time, you know, talking about it? And it's like, oh, I actually did. You know, and I did it just because it was something that was important to me. And they're like, oh, well,
Well, then what else can you do? Because I just want to be mad. I want to be mad.
So it's just,
no, I mean, I'm
you
of the
can't worry
mindset
about
that
those opinions. Those
I'm of the
opinions don't
mindset
matter.
that
You know, the type
we're
of
all gonna
opinions
fuck
that
up. Yeah.
matter are the people that support you and the people that understand you. You know, whether that be if you worry about all that, it's because I did at the beginning. You know, and I was just kind of coming into the whole whatever this adventure is called, the COVID adventure. You know, I was like, I took a lot of it to heart, and I just had to learn to just be like, all right, you know, you can't value everybody's opinion, and strangers on the internet is one that you definitely shouldn't prioritize at all.
I've had a few friends that it's so interesting to me, man, because like back in 2015, I made this viral video to where people called it fat shaming, and it was just all kinds of shit. And I learned firsthand that this social media outrage that people view, like you see the number of views a video is getting, all the hateful comments. It's like, if you would just take the phone and put it down, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's like the anger and the animosity and the anxiety that you're feeling only exists because you are reading those fucking comments and you're looking at the views. That's it. So that's the other thing about like social media outrage is like you said, they will move on to the next thing. Because I recently had a friend that she had a video, a hate video made about her. She's like, it's got over 100,000 views. What do I do? It's like, ignore it. It only has power if you let it have power. These people don't care about
Or you just post it. Post it on the story, like link to it. You know what I mean? Like, whatever. Go ahead.
Whatever.
I used to do that. There was this one, what is his name? Thomas Moran. I think he's this journalist here in New Jersey, and he works for, you know, the NJ.com. And I think he wrote like 4 or 5, like just slander pieces. It was like the same recycled thing just over and over again, you know? And the first one, it got me all like fired up. I'm like, this asshole, like, you know, I'm like ready to a rebuttal. Like, why do I, you know, what am I doing? Next time he made another article, I just started posting them up on my story. And then you would read the comments, and it would just be all these people just bashing him. You know, so it's just like, you got to have a little fun with it because it's so meaningless.
Yeah, that's one of those things these reporters don't understand. It's like when you put your name on that piece that you write, I'm going to look up your Instagram and I'm sending it to the trolls, baby. I was like, I guarantee I got a bigger following you, and my following is comprised of fucking savages. They don't like you motherfuckers. They don't like journalists for the most part. So it's like, if you want to do it, roll the dice, see what happens. I've had like, yeah, I totally understand that. But now you were young when that happened, when that accident happened, and you paid your debt to society. And how old are you now? How old are you now?
I'm 35 now.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So it's been yeah, so you paid your debt to society, you did your time, stuff like that. So now the most recent thing, in case you didn't know, I've had Crenshaw on the show a few times, and I brought you up last time because I saw the altercation you two had, and I wanted to bring this up because I feel like you two are on the same side to an extent, but you just don't even realize it. Because I've talked to Crenshaw about things I don't agree with him on, and I've talked to him about things I do agree with him on. But I saw the spat that you two had, and Crenshaw's to the point where he's firing back now. Like he's getting fed up with it. He's getting pissed off with a lot of the follower base and stuff like that. Constant red flag rhetoric stuff. But I saw the tweet that you made, and then you posted, and then Crenshaw commented on it. So, and then I had him on the show, and I was just like, okay, so what's going on with this? And so basically talked about, you know, fake tough guy, these things, and I was like, okay, well, I understand the animosity you both feel right now. But where do you stand on this? Because I think Crenshaw is just like, he's one of those guys, like, if they fire back at me, if they fire at me, I'm gonna fire back.
I mean, it's not about being a tough guy, like, at all. And there's no animosity. I was making what I felt was a fair observation. And I have a lot of respect for Dan. Anybody who serves their country in any capacity, whether it be law enforcement, anything, I have a tremendous amount of respect for it. So it's not about that at all. But as a politician, and especially somebody in his position who is a very could be a politician, like truly of the people. He's got that. He's young. He's charismatic. There's a lot of people. You know, not a lot of politicians garner like a social media following. You know, that type of voice. And I think that's really important to use that in the best way that you can. You know, and you didn't hear a whole lot from Crenshaw during the shutdowns. You know, and that was my observation is, you know, he was talking about stimulus packages and stuff. We need a stimulus package. And it's like, that's not the solution. We shouldn't be championing another stimulus package. We should be working to open the country completely, you know, because very, very clearly that was a mistake.
So you feel like Crenshaw came late to the game?
Well, and I'm sure I'm not saying he didn't do anything, but I'm saying a politician of his capacity with the voice that he does have, I think that he should have done a lot more for the American people during that time. Now, as soon as we're talking about Afghanistan, it's, I see him on Fox News every other day. So when I say, when I put that out there, that's like, hey, where were you when we needed you? Like, I get it. There's a crisis in Afghanistan. I didn't agree with what he said. He was talking about going back in and retaking, one of the airports or something like that. And so it wasn't. It was saying like, hey, you're supposed to be here with us all the time, not just when it's talking about war. Like, where were you for the past 18 months? So that's what it was meant as, because I find a lot of these Republicans don't step up to the plate when it's really important to do so. And the COVID-19 shutdowns, Republicans let the middle class America Republican base down. They really did. They outside of a few of them who really fought, just didn't really do much. Sending out a couple tweets talking about reopen the country doesn't cut it. I saw a lot of people lose a lot, and I saw the damage kind of from the ground level, and I've heard it and I've talked to people, so I take that very seriously. And then as far as the him firing back, it wasn't meant to get into that. It's I think probably because people do take a lot of shots at him, he's like on edge, like ready to fire back. But it was a criticism, and you're in public office, so you should engage criticism a little bit better. I get it. I've been fired at a couple times, and then like somebody says something, I just like snarl, but it's not what it was about. It's not a pissing match. It's an observation. I think it was a pretty fair one, and then as far as the comment goes, it's not about being tough, dude. It's about using a voice that I do have, because a lot of people identify with what we did at Attilas, and a lot of people identify with the things that we talk about. So when I put that out there, that's an open criticism to a politician. That's not a shot at somebody. Nobody's trying to get brownie points on Instagram. That's far from what it's about. I'd rather get brownie points for triggering liberals than Dan Crenshaw.
So you think if you two ever met, though, you could probably hash this shit out?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have questions for him, because like I said, I think he's somebody who could be a force for an energized Republican base. And I think a lot of people thought that, and I think a lot of people feel like I do, like, what are you doing? Like, why aren't you using that more? You know what I mean? And that's,
well, there's something that I've noticed over these past 9 months that the Biden administration's been in power, or in office rather. I should fucking say power. It's what it is. These tyrants and suits, whatever. The thing that aggravated me the most, though, is like in the 4 years where Republicans were the majority, what got done? Like I was sitting there. There was a lot of things that I was kind of like, when we had the opportunity, we didn't. It was fought left and right, and now that we're out, and so when people are criticizing Crenshaw and other Republicans, and they're fair criticisms, but it's like, what are you doing? It's like, well, there's nothing really they can do. We don't have the majority any longer in Congress. We literally can. I mean, our last line of defense is the filibuster, and the Democrats trying to strip that from us now. So it's kind of like it's kind of like. At the same token, when Republicans had their chance, they didn't. And now when people are saying, well, Republicans need to do something, they can't. They legitimately can't. Like, I've talked to Crenshaw about it several times. It's like, we're fucking hamstrung. It's like, they have the majority. There's literally nothing we can do. So there was a lot of anger things that I saw. Like, for example, like, I got tired of seeing Representative or Ted Cruz going on there and just filleting Zuckerberg for social media censorship. I remember when Diamond and Silk had their account, I think it was shadow banned or deleted on Facebook. Cruz is crucifying Zuckerberg, but nothing changes. Like, nothing changes, and the government is in bed with big tech, and they're protecting them. And so when they were talking about that HR 14 or whatever it was, the law that was protecting social media, I remember talking about that with Crenshaw on the first show, and said if we change just one word the wrong way, this thing can spiral out of control. And he had a point there. I understood that. But at the same token, like, as far as Congress, like, nothing got done. Like, nothing really kind of got done.
That's kind of the I think the way things are just going now. It's and it's not a criticism to Republicans, but I didn't get the time to fully digest that vote the other day. You know, where I saw on social media, you know, these Republicans voted for
Yes,
red flag.
I did the same mistake. Same mistake. Yeah.
But I didn't get to digest it. But you know, I watched Madison Cawthorn's video where he put out a video immediately afterwards, and I'm listening to him talk. And I like Madison. I met him. It was down during one of the DC rallies, one of the earlier ones after the election. And we walked past each other on the street. He's a great guy. I get an awesome feel from him. But I'm watching him explain this video, and all I can think about is, you know, he's explaining the process, and he sounds honest, but it still sounds like bullshit. Like the political process sounds like bullshit. You know, you're talking about you have to vote for something because something else is attached to it, and it's like I understand what he's saying, and it makes sense because I can follow it. But why is our political process working like this, where they have to?
That's the thing. That's how it's always been, though, and I think people are finally starting to wake up and see how the meat is made, and they're not liking it. Because I know Ted Cruz for a while was talking about passing legislation that basically said we can do one bill, one topic at a time. And that's a different conversation that leads into this idea of the power never relinquish power. They're never going to be term limits. They're never going to do that. So yeah, when these omnibus bills, because even, you see, I was kind of pissed at Gun Owners of America when they made that tweet, and then Barstool Sports tagged me, other people are tagging me, I'm just kind of like, oh fuck, and I didn't read into it. Because I usually trust GOA to have accurate tweets and stuff like that. It said the same thing. It's like, oh, these Republicans voted on the red flag laws. I'm like, wait, what the fuck? I was like, because I know Crenshaw before had talked about it, but he never actually did it. He just said he wanted to have a conversation. He got raked across the coals for it. And I told him, I was kind of like, you should have known better. Yeah, I was like, you should have known better. Like, you don't talk about the Second Amendment with liberals. You just don't. It's like, you do not compromise an inch. If you do, they will take a fucking mile. That is the one top topic. You do not have a conversation. It's like, no.
It is.
You just sit there. It's like a toddler. It's like, nope, not gonna do it. But when GOA tweeted that, I posted it, and I was like, this is not a good look for Republicans. And I saw Cawthorn was on there. I saw Crenshaw was on there. I was like, wait, something's not right. I was like, and then it hit me. It's like, wait a minute. Like, where is this bill in the stage? Like, was this like the early onset of the bill? Because if that's the case, then yes, it turned out to be for military funding and then to protect service members so they don't get a dishonorable discharge for refusing the COVID vaccine. So the one question I couldn't get answered.
Which is very important.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, yeah. So, and that's what Democrats do, though. They tack on these certain things like red flags and shit like that to give the perception that they're fighting for it, but they know it's going to get stripped out earlier so the bill can move forward. So it's like Republicans will take, okay, we'll take this out, you take that out. So Cawthorn promises. Crenshaw promises, but I don't think they either of them, or maybe they do and they just don't want to address it, but it's like nobody trusts politicians right now, and they shouldn't. So it's kind of like when you say like Madison, I haven't met. He's young. I think he's 25. He goes up there and he says some stuff like, Madison, what the fuck are you doing, man? Like, okay, it's like it's almost cringe. Like, Madam Speaker, come and take them. Like, oh, okay, bro, easy. Mr. Smith goes to Washington. It sounds great, but realistically, you're not changing any minds with this. So when this happened, Cawthorn does this thing. It's like, guys, I give you my word. It's like, Madison, I don't think you'll understand. Nobody trusts your word when it comes to the Second Amendment, and they shouldn't. Like, they shouldn't. So I still have yet to receive an answer on how do I know for a fact that's getting taken out of the bill.
Yeah, and that's the American people shouldn't have to go through that process just to, like, we shouldn't have to always be on edge with like, oh my God, what else is in the bill? You know what I mean? When bills are introduced, the American people should be able to understand the bill in relatively, simple terms. Like, it doesn't need to be 50,000 things. That is there's no reason for that other than malintentions. There's no reason that you have to pass these big bills with 50,000 different things in them unless you're trying to hide something. Because if you had a good bill, it would pass on its own. And that type of stuff is what is starting to really, I think, turn off a lot of people to both Republicans and Democrats. Like, people on both sides are just starting to get extremely frustrated with the process. I know a lot of people who were on the other side in terms of COVID stuff who have now since come around, and people who were just all over the place, and now people are starting to come together. Healthy distrust for government in general, which I think is a good thing. But where does that go? What I mean? Especially, where does it go nowadays, where government just kind of feels like a runaway train? You have New York, where nurses and doctors are making
Oh my
making
God. Yeah.
a choice that any individual should be able to make, no matter what, under any circumstances. They should be able to make that choice, whether you agree with it or not. They're making it. They're not asking for anything outlandish. They're saying, "Please leave me alone. I don't want that."
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to lose their jobs because the governor says, "Well, I'll just bring in the National Guard."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
that's crazy. Like that's insane. That's who died and made this person queen, because that's what it's looking and feeling like right now.
Mm-hmm. It was honestly astonishing to me that they made that kind of a move. Like these very same healthcare workers whose ass you kissed for the last year, that you praised, that you actually, they leveraged them for the rest of us to get vaccinated, saying if you don't, all their fight was in vain. And then you turn around, the same people are saying, well, we don't want to get the jab. We have built up antibodies. We've addressed this. We've been through this. And now they just turn their back on it.
The science is clear on it.
Oh yeah, the science is very clear. Absolutely. That's, and that's the hard part. I feel like, and I've spoken about this a few times, that I feel like, let me just ask you bluntly, where do you get your honest news from?
It's hard these days. It really is.
The fact that you can't answer that right away shows the point. The MSM on both sides has lied to us. The propaganda nonstop being perpetuated to support one political side. It's like now we're in this conundrum where nobody believes the press, nobody believes the government, and now Fauci's out there. I'm like crying wolf over here. You got to get the vaccination. And it's like, yeah, I don't fucking believe you anymore. Like, because when we initially shut down, they hyped this thing up like, we're all going to die. There's people dropping dead in the streets. It's like, are they? I don't know.
Yeah, no, if they weren't talking about it, nobody would know.
Mm-hmm.
If you didn't see a mask on people's face,
Mm-hmm.
and you didn't turn on the TV and get bombarded with every news channel, commercial, TV, weave it in there now. Nobody would know. They really made it seem like people were going to be literally dropping dead in the streets. I mean, there was a point early on where they played scenes from China, which, who knows if that was actually real or not, of people literally dropping dead in the streets and bodies being stacked. And it's like, man, that was a little bit of theater.
And which it scared everybody. Like, I can't blame anybody initially for believing in this. Like, I believed in it too. I was like, oh shit, this sucks. But then as soon as they started talking about closing things, like, oh, wait a minute. It's like, nah. It's like, we're going down the wrong road here. But I can't fault anybody for believing in this whole thing they've cooked up. Like, I really don't, because we all did.
No, man, I was wiping my groceries down for like 2-3 days, and then honestly, and then like I just kind of thought about it, and I'm like, because Frank and I never stopped working. We were still we had just bought the gym 8 months prior to COVID, so we still had a lot of work to do. We bought an absolute dump of a gym, and we're really
That's
turning
great
it around.
self-promotion right there, by the way. I bought a shithole back here. No,
it was. And we turned it around, so we still had a lot to do. So we were kind of out and about, and I was definitely being like super cautious for a little while. But then it just like it didn't make sense, because I was like, where are the bodies? Like, where's everybody? I only see it on television. And then we started to look into the other things that were red flags, the PCR tests and stuff like that. But they definitely got everybody, because it's a scary thing, and it's something that is actually possible.
Oh yeah.
And that's what they did. They just kind of played off of that, and really just they ratcheted up the fear. And especially when you put people in their homes, and the only access they have to information is you just being like, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. People are dying. It's no wonder a lot of people were truly scared of it. I think a lot of people took advantage of it as well, because it was the way for the lazy individual to kind of seem as if it's like the ultimate virtue signal. I'm not going to work because I don't want to spread COVID. Like, no, it's kind of just because you're not a real hard worker, and you just kind of were making more money now. You know what I mean? So, but I certainly understand people being scared, because it's something that's, could be real, but this time it's just a little
it's not as
overstated,
lethal as they made it out to be, because I think like we saw this thing evolve into where like we believed in it, and then it's like, wait a minute, it's like, this is going a little too far. This is we're infringing here. Y'all are infringing a little bit. And then it turned into, once the vaccine was introduced, people like me were like, I believe in Milton Friedman. I liked Milton Friedman's stance on economics. He talked about abolishing the FDA, and we're seeing firsthand right now why we don't need the FDA. Because when Johnson & Johnson, Pfizer, and the rest of them came out with their vaccines, there were millions of people lining up to take those suckers. It's like, hey, that's fair. And I'm not against the COVID vaccine. I just want to see some long-term trials on this before I inject that shit into my body. That's all I want. But now we're painted as being anti-vaxxers. It's like, I'm not anti-vax. I just don't believe in this one right now.
It's so funny how they use those words to categorize people and dismiss legitimate beliefs and legitimate feelings. Like that's a totally normal thought to have, and it's funny because there's so many different people from so many demographics who are feeling that way, and they're all being now lumped into this like anti-vax, anti-science, everything's you're anti-science, because the vaccine is inherently, like, when you think vaccine, you're like, oh, it's a good thing. Like it helps people. So you're anti-vax, or you're anti, you're immediately bad. Yeah. Science is supposed to be a good thing. So you're anti-science. It's just funny how they use those words,
and the really science kept changing. The science kept changing. At first, it was like, masks are good for you, wear the masks. And it's like, oh, wear 2 masks. Fauci says wear 2 masks. And then Fauci talks about, like, there should be no federal oversight when it comes to closing businesses. That's up to the individual businesses and enterprise. And then he flipped on that. And then, oh, by the way, if you get vaccinated with the first vaccine, you're not going to get COVID. Oh, guess what? You're getting COVID. Oh, you need the booster shots. Oh, guess what? You're still a super spreader. And it's kind of like, okay, you tell me to believe the science. Which science? Because your science has continuously changed. Or how about this? Just don't eat shit, go fucking exercise, and let your immune system do what it's made to do.
That was our biggest beef is, we looked at this public health policy that they were, touting as the savior. And it's like, we threw everything else out the window except for COVID. You can't, there's so many things that you have to consider. If you're truly interested in public health, there's so many things that you have to consider. That's such a complex idea, but it does start at the individual. Public health starts with individual habits, and that ranges from the things that you eat to the vices that you have, whatever it is. And never is that even discussed pre-COVID. You know what I mean?
No, bro. It's you know as well as I do. You're in the fitness world, so you know as well as I do. They can run an anti-smoking campaign. Everybody's like, yeah, smoking's bad. And then you run a campaign like, hey, how about you stop being a fat fuck? Oh my God! And people lose their shit. And it's like, what's the number one killer of Americans? Fucking heart disease.
Yes. If you add up all of the obesity related deaths, it's so far beyond things, and they're dead quiet on that. And that's something I brought up the other night on Tucker Carlson. He was asking, like, why is the question was, why do you think the government only thinks the vaccine is the way forward? And it's like, well, obviously that's where all the money's to be made. There's no money in people eating good food. There's no money for the government, at least. There's money for middle class America and small farms and stuff like that. But there's no money in a healthy population, because the worst thing for government, especially our government, the way that it exists today, is an independent population. They need a dependent population because they need to justify their existence of this big sprawling just mess of a government, all these offices, and it's crazy how much government we actually have, but they need people to be dependent on them, or people are going to start saying, hey, you know what, let's abolish the FDA, because that's we don't need them, because we can figure this out ourselves, and we can take our health into our own hands.
There will always be guinea pigs. There will always be guinea pigs. It's just more government oversight, more government overreach. When you have the WHO lying, or China's lying to the WHO, when you have the CDC possibly fudging numbers, like there is massive, I believe there is massive data manipulation. I really do. So when all these debaters all over these platforms are coming out talking about, like, well, look at the data. It's like, are you telling me that you trust the data, like, implicitly? Because I don't trust the government. I think the government has lied. I think it continues to lie. But, and you're 100% right. If people understood how much power they have in themselves to go out, like you, a big muscular dude, you go on there, and I can already tell you 100% what they're going to say. Oh, you just want us to be a juiced up fucking roided freak like that guy. It's like, no, that's not what he's saying. It's like, that's not what he's saying. He's saying, how about you just put the fat pills down and go for a fucking walk and go take care of yourself. And you say something like that, like, it's kind of like where it meets in the middle, like the pendulum swings center mass and not too far one way. Oh my God, you're a racist. You're a white supremacist. You're a fat shamer. You're all these things. Like, okay, you know what? COVID has killed, like, 81% of COVID casualties were
I've been
obese.
obese.
So it's like, trust the
People
science. Where's the science
people,
now?
but these are the people that hate personal responsibility. You know, the
Yeah.
people that tended to be, and I'm not talking about like initially scared, but the people that continue to latch on to COVID.
Hmm.
I am truly convinced these people are doing it out of convenience,
Oh yeah.
because it allows them to escape personal responsibility. You
Yes.
know, these are people who, there's nothing offensive in saying that you should be a certain weight.
Mhm.
You know, it's not an insult in and of itself. Now, if you say it in a
Yeah.
way, you know, and you say it in a derogatory manner, then
Mhm.
absolutely, you know. But I've been telling people that they've been overweight for 12 years as a trainer and a strength coach. You know,
Mhm.
I've been overweight in my own life, and I had to tell that to myself as I
Mhm.
was, you know, like struggling breathing as I'm
Right.
carrying groceries up my second floor apartment. You
Mhm.
know, after my marriage, and I was like letting myself kind of just
Mhm.
go. I had to be honest with myself there, because that comes from a place of self-love, you
Mhm.
know. And if
Oh yeah.
that's, they don't want that, because there's an immense amount of power in that. And if you ask anybody, especially somebody who's lost a significant amount of weight, the difference in their life and their personal capacity to take control of their life, you know, before and after, they're
Mhm.
two entirely different people,
Yeah.
capable of two entirely different sets of things. And the latter one is so much more powerful.
Mhm.
And public policy should be, you know, in a perfect system, which we're not quite there, should be uplifting people and teaching that. You know, it's
Mhm.
like you even look now at the physical education programs in high schools. You know, like I don't know how old you are. You're probably right around the
I'm
same age as
37,
me.
bro. We
Okay,
played dodgeball and popcorn. Like we beat the fuck out of each other with the noodles and
dude, it
stuff.
was.
Yeah.
You know, you remember having like you know, you had the day every year that you would like compete for medals. What
Yes.
was it called?
Yes. Yeah.
You know, that where like that stuff that almost doesn't exist anymore. It's like there are
Mhm.
these watered down things where,
Mhm.
you know, that used to be an opportunity for kids to test their potential, and there's so much
Mhm.
growth and stuff like that. But
I
you
think a
know,
lot of that stuff
it's
came from places that we didn't want to separate winners from losers, and that's basically, I think, where America has went wrong is we've given the losers too big of a voice on social media. It's like if you're a loser, I don't want to talk. Like
absolutely
if you're a loser in business, if you're a loser in whatever aspect because of your laziness, I don't want anything to do with you. Like, and I'm with you there. Like I think steel sharpens steel. Like we would have things in like back in the army, we would do the same thing. We'd be very competitive against each other, not for the sake that we hated each other, but to make us 10 times more lethal towards the
growth.
fucking enemy. So when you have these people out there saying, it started with the everyone gets a trophy generation, like my generation, it's just like now we're seeing my generation grown up and demanding politicians represent the same type of mindset, which is pure fucking laziness. And
Hmm.
this socialistic mindset of, like you said, I should sit at home and get paid, make good money. I don't want to go to work. And these people have no incentivization to go out there and be successful. Men are not taught to be men anymore. It's like you're the provider. You're going to go out there. You're going to make the money. You're going to do your best to support your family. And things progressed and changed, I think, in a good direction to where women didn't have to stay home. They can go out and get a job if they want. And then it kind of, like the alpha male or the hunter-gatherer mentality kind of just died off. It's like, I'm
Yep,
sorry. Like,
it
I feel like
definitely.
most of these liberal women, like, find these men that probably cry after sex. It's just like, do you really want to fuck that guy? Like, you really want to be with that kind of like? Okay,
They
whatever you're
don't.
into.
They don't. They'll be those type of women will usually be with a man like that because they're easy to control. But
Yeah.
you know exactly what they actually want. You know, because they wind up,
Mhm.
you know, finding something else, but they'll stay with that kind of guy. It's very convenient for them because they can tell them what to do. But you're right. It's a combination of all these things, and it's led us to this really weird place. Um, you know, I remember when I was younger, and my stepfather, who was pretty hard on me, but he was hard on me for good reason. You know, he encouraged things like competition.
Mhm.
You know, he used to like lecture us at the dinner table, and it was funny because he always used to talk about how competitive the Chinese were,
Mhm.
especially the Chinese youth. And he was like, you know, you guys, you know, you should be, you know, it's not about getting A's to make your parents proud. It's about getting A's to prove you're better than everybody else, like to prove you can work harder, you know,
Mhm.
to show, you know, your dominance. He's like, because that's how you get better. That's how you grow. You
Mhm.
know, competition breeds
Yep.
a new type of animal from that.
Yep.
And that has just, it's just really been watered down over the
Mhm.
past 10, 20 years or so. And I think we're really seeing the effects of it because you said it perfectly. It leads you right into that like socialist mindset where it's like, well, I just deserve everything, you
Mhm.
know, because I was born and I'm here. And it's like, no, you know, you're born, and that's enough. The rest you got to do. Like it's not.
Bro, I
It's
saw
not
this
everybody's
one thing.
responsibility.
This one guy's just like, he was in his 30s, still living with his parents. I don't know if you ever saw this. It went viral like maybe a year or so ago. And this guy legitimately, honestly believed, he's like, I don't have to do anything because I didn't ask to be born. My parents just had me. So I don't just like, you sit there and you look at this as like, and this guy's on welfare. Like, I'm paying for this schmuck. Like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And that's, and it's a scary thing that I think America is going down a very, very bad road. But it also makes me wonder if social media has not intentionally misrepresented disproportionately how many alphas there actually are versus, and I'm not saying there's anything wrong with beta. I mean, it's like a personality. I understand that. But how many alphas truly still exist that social media won't allow to be promoted, they won't allow it to get a high visibility. Everything is just very effeminate. And I look around here in Texas, and it's just like there's certain areas like, no, it's nothing but men around here. Then you go like downtown Dallas, and it's like, oh, nope, I get it. This makes sense. It's just like, okay.
I think media is very good at that. I think that's something they've perfected over the years. And as media has sort of progressed into social media, it's not as if they lost that skill. Mm-hmm. How to amplify certain messages and dull down other ones. It's as simple as the programming that they use. And, back when it was just television and radio, it was simpler programming, and now it's just algorithms and stuff like that. They have the ability to do that. And it's been shown, I think, very clearly at this point that there's a favorite team, at least you could say, whose voice definitely gets heard a lot more. And I think that there probably are a lot more, and because of that dulling of their own voice, that probably impacts their behavior too. Because it makes people feel as if they're alone, and they're really not. I've been doing a lot of these speaking engagements, and I talk to a lot of people. When I go, I speak, and I really like to just kind of engage with people, because everybody likes to talk about the gym and what has happened, because it was, like I said, it was a story that a lot of people strongly identified with. So I talk to lots and lots of people, and these events, they have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, sometimes 5,000 people at these things. And all these people come from all these areas. And the one thing I hear all the time is like, I love being here because, in my school or at my job or whatever it is, I feel like I'm the only person who, is interested in liberty and medical freedom, or whatever it may be. All these ideas that are kind of being like pushed down and censored. And then they come to these places and they're like, man, like there are a lot of us. There are a lot of people who have these same values, and it's just manipulation of messages, and that's another one of the beautiful things they did with COVID is they forced everybody away from each other, to where the only way we communicated was mostly through their networks, and if you're trying to say something and you're being censored, it's very difficult for ideas to flow freely. So it's very easy to manipulate when you look at it.
Well, we have a mutual friend, Andy Frisilla, and Andy has talked about over the course of the last 6 months pulling away his platform from social media to try and devise a means of connecting with his audience outside of that, to where he can't be censored. Are you taking steps to do the same thing?
Yeah, it's a weird process, because you have to have, I guess, enough of a draw that people will want to follow you elsewhere, because one of the advantages of social media is everybody's hooked on it. Like you don't pull up your phone and open your web browser and go to your favorite website. Like you open your phone and pull up your favorite app.
I actually kind of do. It's Pornhub, so. You said it. I'm just saying. I don't know.
Business first.
Wait, does Pornhub have an app? If Pornhub has an app, then yeah,
we're good. They probably do.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, you're right. We evolve around apps. You're 100% right. I admit, the first thing I do is I'm checking my emails, and then I'm pulling up social media to see who's talking shit. So
yeah, and so if you remove yourself, you have to, I guess, offer something to people that's valuable enough that they're going to go out of their way, and not just because the way social media works is people just stumble across your content because they're there, and because people are there so frequently. So it's definitely something worth considering. Pulling it off is, I think,
Difficult.
doable, but it's probably not easy. But it's something that I've definitely been considering. It's like, because it's a very weird feeling when they just shut you off like that.
Yeah.
Especially when you've developed an audience, and your business is tied to it, and it's very strange. We, like I said, we sell a lot of T-shirts, and people support from all around the world. We've sent shirts to all 50 states dozens and dozens of times over, and to 18 countries around the world, and that's people's way of supporting us. They say, I'm going to buy a T-shirt, and plus we have to work for our money, so we have to pack up T-shirts because it's just better than just donations. And that's the bulk of where we get a lot of our lawyers' fees from and stuff like that. And when they shadow banned us, it was just like, the T-shirt sales were like, and they just sunk. So it's something I think that any person with a platform should probably consider. It's just a matter of figuring it out. Either that, or you just have to really kind of spread yourself out and only say certain things on certain platforms and kind of redirect traffic elsewhere. And so, it's a very tricky process. It's weird having an audience in the first place. 2 years ago, I didn't even have to consider things like this, and now it's like, I used to just wake up and just like put whatever I wanted on Instagram, like, just, and now you have to consider. There's a lot to consider, and especially if you're in a position where you're under scrutiny.
Well, there's a certain level of a certain modicum of influence that you do wield, and I think people don't understand that. Like I didn't really consider it at first, but then I remember I posted a few things that people really took to heart, and I'm like, man, y'all take this shit super serious. And then as the years progressed, so did I. So I understood that, like, when I'm not talking like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who's back there tweeting about Jewish space lasers years ago. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with her? But there are things, you're right, that there is a certain level of influence that you do wield. People are listening to what you're saying, so you have to walk. I don't say cautiously, but you really have to think about what you're going to say and post, and make sure that, number one, it's right, it's correct, and that you don't spread misinformation. And that's why I got pissed off at Gun Owners America. It's like, you guys did not give proper context of that bill. You fooled me. It's my own fault. I should have done my own fucking research. I was like, but, Crenshaw hits me up. It's like, that's actually not how it is. It's like, I had a feeling. I had a fucking feeling. It's like, I jumped the gun on it because it's a very tense topic. Like, we are not negotiating.
It's an emotional thing.
Oh, absolutely. And justifiably so, because we live in an age right now where all you have to do is just look across the pond in Australia where the cops are beating the shit out of the people over there. And it's kind of like, hey, anybody want to do some black market gun running to Australia? Because I'm down. Like, let's go fucking make some money. Let's pop some cops. Like, I mean, it's justified. Like, if we saw that shit in America, people would be rising up and shooting it. And it's created this interesting dynamic that the blue line supporters are starting to say, wait a minute. It's like, we're starting to see now that you do not trust power without a healthy level of paranoia and skepticism. So now when I say I support cops, like, I support the good ones. I don't support blindly. I do not support blindly anymore. And I think that, we needed to wake up and see that.
I think it's a good thing for people to, again, just have a healthy distrust towards government in general.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you don't have to dislike people that work in government, but you do have to remember that, people are more motivated financially than by most things, especially if the livelihood of not only themselves but their family and their children are linked to that. And you may not make that decision that they make, but you can't count on that these people are going to make the right decisions when something like that does come, or if it does come, excuse me. You see a lot of these, especially the videos in Australia, like that should be a real wake up call for people. And if it's not, it should be a wake up call for two things. It should be a wake up call, for gun rights, for the ability for an individual to not only defend themselves against somebody who's robbing their house, but an out of control government, because that's what it was written for primarily anyway. But also just to just to have that healthy distrust and to start questioning things a lot more, because we blindly trust that all, thin blue line, which is it's a great sentiment. It really is. But life is a hell of a lot more complicated than that. And I think we run into big pitfalls when we start to label ourselves like that. You see the divisiveness among people, um, with the whole line BLM movements, where there's a lot of really good people on both sides who are jumping all in on an idea that probably doesn't represent accurately, and instead of just kind of subscribing to a middle road, it's a one or another thing.
Yeah.
But what you're actually seeing, which I thought was interesting the other day, is the script start to change, where you have the thin blue line crowd who are now being very skeptical of police, and you have the BLM crowd who's now very skeptical
of government and stuff. Yeah,
of government and the Biden administration. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, this is good. I like this. Like, I like this. Like, I really do. Where you have the New York City kind of chapter of BLM kind of bucking the national organization, and the guy basically coming out and saying, like, where are you guys on this issue? This is a black issue. And that's somebody who's probably, I don't know him, but he's probably a good person who really does care about like black issues that truly affect the black community, not media hyped ones, because he's talking about 70 some odd % of black Americans in New York City don't want to take the vaccine, and these policies are really affecting them. And so they're coming off script, and you're seeing the people that have been pitted against each other start to come to the center.
What world do we live in? What world do we live in when like the thin blue line and the BLM are coming together saying, you know what? Fuck the government. It's like there's like a little bit of anarchist in all of us. And I'm sitting there like, you know what?
Yeah.
You know what? This is interesting to watch. Like, this is like some WWE shit. It's like off the top rope with the BLM. It's like, where the fuck did he come from? You got like Jerry Brawler, though, like the announcer's like, oh, he's coming out. There's the BLM. And then you get, oh, and there's Antifa. It's like, what the fuck is happening? Like everything is like, but it's like this age of awakening. It's this new age of understanding and realizing like how detrimental the government can be. We're seeing it firsthand. And then why the Second Amendment is so important, and then why you should never trust your government or politicians or cops. And I'm not saying they're bad people. You just don't trust them for the sake of ensuring that they maintain within that power, sir. That I hate saying power, but that they don't abuse what they are given as far as wielding authority.
Yeah, and that distrust, that healthy distrust, is what keeps them within those boundaries, because they understand that they are being watched and monitored.
Checks and balances.
That's I think the real takeaway in all of the past 18 months, 2 years, whatever time frame you want to zoom out to, but everybody turned around and all of a sudden life was really different and everything was chaotic, and we all wondered how we got here, but it wasn't this overnight thing.
Slowly
in general,
that water.
In general, we have not been paying attention, and we've been putting our faith in politicians, who they make us feel good, and we go to their rallies and whatever, and then we vote them in and we like turn the other way for the next couple of years. And like inch by inch, our government has changed and grown and grown and grown and grown to now, like we're talking about today, we're like, what even is it anymore? Like, why do we even have a legislative branch? Like, let's just do away with it, because we'll just elect governors and mayors and town councils that'll just, pass mandates. We'll just, because that's basically how it's running. And it's like, how did we get here? Well, we were all busy being, distracted, and if we learn anything from this, it should be, I think it's our civic duty as responsible citizens to dedicate a certain amount of time and energy in our lives to paying attention to these things, and not just pressing a button and see you next election cycle. It's
been good to how you said that. I like that, because I've told a lot of people this, that I feel like our political arena right now was the Kardashians, and now it's politics. I think we went from reality TV and seeing Jersey Shore and all that dumb shit to where now it's like we've shifted focuses, like, oh my God, Crenshaw's going after AOC, or Ted Cruz is going after AOC, or something's going on. And like more people now are paying attention, I think, than really ever before. Honestly, and I think it's kind of a good thing. I think it's good that people are starting to wake up and understand, like, the government has grown way too much. This monster that we've been feeding unintentionally has grown to the point where it's taken over. And I think more people now are getting involved, whether it be on the left or the right. At least more people now are going out to the polls. They're paying attention to what's going on. They're learning the process of government. There were so many people out there that didn't even know there was 3 branches of government. They were just like, oh, the president runs everything. It's like, it doesn't work that way. And then, you talk about these executive orders, and I'm sitting here, I'm kind of like, look, I'm not fucking a constitutional lawyer, but I'm sitting here looking at this like, wait a minute. This is not good. Like, this is not good. Like, this sword's going to swing the other way when Biden takes office eventually, or a Democrat. And sure as shit, Biden's in there like, I like ice cream, and here's 36 executive orders. Like, God damn. So Republicans are like, oh, he's signing all these executive orders. Like, yeah, but when Trump did it, you sucked his dick. You loved him for it. So which is it? Versus, like, constitutionals like, hey, we don't need this. Like, fuck the government. We don't need this. Like, we survived how many years without the FDA? We survived how many years without the fucking IRS? We don't need these motherfuckers. But people are so scared.
But even if you look at the inception of those organizations and the quality of life, overall, the quality of life, okay, so look at the FDA and all these health organizations. The average American is so much more unhealthy today than they were 50 years ago.
So what are they really doing?
Not just a little bit. Yeah, not a little bit. You look at all these financial institutions and all these regulatory, all these financial regulatory, the IRS and all that stuff. Yeah. Americans are not well off financially. Most Americans are not even are barely financially literate. I mean, I read a stat. I think it's don't quote me on it. I think it was 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah. Like, I can believe that. Yeah.
What are these organizations doing for people? They're not doing anything. They're in the way, if anything, and all they're doing is causing confusion and bad policy.
They're raising taxes to pay the lower income class. That's for many of which are abusing the system. They're sitting around, and I want to go back to what you said. There was actually a really good point you made. You talked about like the BLM bringing certain issues to light, and I caught a lot of flack like months ago when I talked about BLM is talking about some good conversation topics that we should be addressing, such as we talk about inheritance wealth that has been passed down through the generations. Like, there is no denying that the Black American or minority in general has faced a sincere economic hump that white Americans have not, because essentially, our generational wealth was passed down. And I'm not talking about like millions of dollars. I'm just talking about like you were established, you had a house, you grew up. Whereas in Black Americans, we can actually have a conversation of how do we get the 18-year-old black kid out of the ghetto, educated, and a good job. It's like, those are the conversations we should be having. Not this bullshit like we have systemic racism in the system. It's like, okay, well, where? Well, it's fucking racist. Like, we're arguing about the wrong fucking things. And these institutions, like you said.
The system is broken.
Yeah.
The system is broken. It's not racist. It's just broken.
Yeah.
It's not designed to incentivize or help anybody, especially in the lower income brackets, out of poverty. And that's what a good system should do, regardless of their skin color. And it just so happens that, the majority of that demographic is, Black America. But the problem shouldn't be a focus on racist policies. It should be on how do we get into these communities and turn them around, because most if not all of the bad neighborhoods and the low income areas in America were nice places at one time. They didn't just start as slums. The gym is right next to Camden. So Camden's a little city on the river right across from Philadelphia. Used to be a beautiful city. It's not Black people's fault. It's not white people's fault that it has turned into a shithole. It's politicians' faults. It's big corporations' faults who have pulled out, who have done deals and stuff like that, and industries that have closed down because of bad regulations and things like that, and ports being bought up in other places. It's nobody in regular America's fault. Yet they have the politicians want you to blame it on things like racism and stuff like that, because it directs the blame away from where the blame really lies, and that's typically, not always, but typically in bad policy.
We were talking on the show earlier today that Obama came out and addressed the border crisis. He was talking about the issues at the border and things like that. It's like, we can no longer, we can't ignore this anymore. We have to do something. It's like, excuse me, sir, you were in office for 8 fucking years. Like, you're the last motherfucker I want to hear about. And then like Joe Biden's like, we gotta do this. Like, you've been in office for 40 fucking years in Washington. Like, you're a career politician. Don't come to me say, we need to do this. Like, you've been there for so fucking long. Like him and Bernie Sanders, like This is why I'm all for term limits. If we want to see a change in how our system of government works, we've got to enforce term limits. You've got to get these career politicians out of there. And then Milton Friedman has good ideas, like based upon your constituents or your area, your say like for example your representative, your district, your salary is based upon that local GDP, as it should be. So if you live in a shithole like Mayor Lori Lightfoot, you're fucked. Like you ain't getting like Maxine Waters, like or even like Pelosi, who barely visits her district. It's like your salary is based upon that local GDP. So, and that's what people don't understand. Like our forefathers, they didn't even want to serve in Congress. Nobody knows this. They did not want to go because you know why? They weren't career politicians. They're like, hey, I'm gonna do my 4 years, but while I'm there, my farm's going to shit. And I can't afford to hire people. So I'm going to go do my shit, make it the best I can be. So that way when I go back, it's good for me. And when politicians don't have to worry about that, like, hey, you're eventually going to have to go flip burgers again. It's like, well, I don't have to worry about that. So why the fuck should I care how my local, residency or my local district is doing?
That's perfect. Actually perfectly said, because they don't have to go back to that.
No.
And that idea isn't even new in terms of America. I mean, like Plato talked about that in the Republic. He talked about how what did he call them? Philosophers, basically. Like these people should be serving, and it's not something where there's incentive to stay. You have an incentive to go in and do your civic duty as a certain class of citizen. You have to prove yourself as a certain intellect, and the idea then was everybody had a role in society.
Bronze, silver, and gold.
Yeah, you had a role and you had a certain duty. If you had a certain capacity, you were a fighter. If you had a certain skill, you were a cook or you were this. There were certain people who were smart, who were well educated, and it was understood there that you go in and you're kind of taken care of. You're fed and you're clothed and you're given like a small stipend or whatever. And then once you do your stuff, you can go back to your life. You can go back to your farm. You can go back here, but that was your duty, and it was to go and do a good job and pass it on to the next person and pass it on to the next person. So you don't wind up with these Joe Bidens and these Bernie Sanders who are 80-year-old men who are so far out of touch with reality that it's actually alarming.
I don't even know. We have a senile old man leading us right now, and we're all just sitting here, and it's kind of like. It's like, who's going to tell him? Like, who's going to do it? Who's going to invoke the 25th? Like, we really, like, this guy belongs in a fucking, and he's going downhill fast. Like, you see him under the Obama presidency, you see him during Trump, you see him now, he's going downhill fast. And it's a scary thought that the guy who's flying the plane is probably asleep. So it's like, who the fuck is, like, who's making the calls is what I want to know. Because it ain't Kamala. She's not smart enough. Is it Pelosi? Is it Obama from the basement? Like, I don't know.
I would say it's probably Pelosi. I mean,
think so?
You never know with these things you see online. Like there's a certain amount of certain type of content I won't post if I can't verify something. I won't post it. But you had that one video. It was like from the White House feed where after he speaks, he said something like. I don't know am I supposed to take questions, Nance, or something like that? And he's like talking into a hot mic.
I know. I'm like, you're the president of the fucking free world. Like, I wasn't supposed to take questions. You're the president. Do whatever the fuck you want.
That again goes back to that beta broadcast where all of the men that we're seeing in politics, not all, but most of the men in politics that we're seeing, are like these easily controlled. Like Joe Biden does not exude strength in any. There's nothing that comes out of that man that is. I think as a leader, you should have a certain presence, and not necessarily an intimidating one, but you should have a powerful one where you walk into the room and people are like, oh, well, we're paying attention to whatever this person says. Joe Biden walks into the room and like, you want to just get him a chair. You know what I mean? You're like
somebody get him a blanket. Get him a blanket.
Like, get him a chair. He's tired. He walked up the stairs. You know what I mean? It's like, and that's as mean as that is. That's coming from a place where like this guy's he's in over his head, and it's pretty scary that we have a system where somebody's just given this guy a script. There's absolutely no way what is coming out of his mouth is coming from his brain. It's not.
He's a shadow president.
That's what it feels like. It really does. I can't say that with any certainty, but
I feel it. I feel it, man. I feel it. Like
that's
like you just said when he says I wasn't supposed to take questions. To me, in my mind, that's probably his advisor saying, Mr. President, they're going to try and bait you, blah, blah. We would advise you not to take questions. Like, so wait, you'll probably take advice from your advisors telling you to duck the press, but you won't take advice from your military general saying, hey, we probably shouldn't give up Bagram just yet?
Yes.
So which is it? Like, I'm so confused. Well, let me give you one final question because I know you're getting home from work. Where do you see America going from here?
It's a good question. And I think I have good days and bad days where, like there's certain days where like the news that comes, you're just like, what is going on? But there's certain days where I see pretty clearly. But overall, I really do see this as an awakening. I think there's a lot of things at play right now, and a lot of people kind of like jockeying for power in this, this new world, whatever you want to call it. And I think the best thing to come out of it is that people are now paying attention, and if the trend continues of people not only paying attention, but this newer trend that we're seeing where people are getting heavily involved, I think that can only lead to good things. I really do. We joked about BLM and the Thin Blue Line crowd coming together, but I think that's one of the most has the potential to be one of the most powerful forces in American history, especially modern history.
Absolutely.
And I do hope that more people start to realize that's the way forward, is coming together as people and starting to hold these people who are basically just running rampant with our lives accountable, and if not, then to get them out and to put people in who will do the job correctly.
Very well said. Like I said, people are paying attention. They're waking up. I like that. Where can people go to find your shirts to support you?
So easiest spot is theattilasgym.com. And Attilas
spell that for me.
Attilis.
Attilis. Theattilasgym.com.
Yep.
.com. I'm going to spam that in the chat right now. We've got almost 500 viewers, but this will get out there more once I post it to Instagram and places like that. But there is the link, ladies and gentlemen. If you want to support Ian Smith and their fight against the government that's trying to royally fuck them, like we've never seen that before, you can go at the link I just posted, theattilasgym.com. Go buy a shirt. Go support them. Do you have a GoFundMe?
Yeah, that's on there. But everything is on the site. You can get all of our news updates,
the Ian
stuff like that.
That's Ian Smith Fitness on Instagram.
Yep.
On Facebook. If you go on my post, I tagged him. You can go support him there. You go give him a follow. The GoFundMe's posted. $5, $10, doesn't fucking matter. It'll one drop in the bucket's not a lot. 1,000 drops in the bucket, that's a lot. So come together, support a true patriot that's standing up for what he believes in. Ian, I appreciate you taking time away from your busy day to come on the show. Thank you so very much, man. I really appreciate it, dude.
Thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. You have yourself a kick-ass night, my man.
You too.
All right, bye, brother. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that does it for the podcast this evening. I don't think my camera's going to work again because I have it tied up in Skype, but I want to say thank you for everybody for tuning in tonight, and thank you for supporting the stream, the show, all of it. It means the world to us. Thank you for sharing the podcast, for all your wonderful reviews. If you want to help us by increasing our exposure, go on iTunes, look up the show, and leave us a good review. It helps boost our numbers up there. Like I said, we are by ourselves. We are under no political umbrella. We fall under no group. It's just all us, myself and my team that runs Shell Shock, CBD, and the podcast. We're doing this together. So with your support, you make this possible. So thank you very much. I greatly appreciate all the love that you give us, the messages that you send to us. And don't forget, you can find this on SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and YouTube. If you go on my Instagram, you hit that link in the bio, you can find all the links right there for you. So again, I appreciate the love and support, guys. It means the world to me. Thank you very much, and you have a wonderful day. And I will see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. CST on the All American Savage Show.